Hello, everyone. Welcome to session 3 of Creation Apologetics. I'm Gary Locklair, and it's good to have you with us. As with every other week, there is a handout. Let me share that handout with you. You think I'd be faster at changing screen? Nah, that's about as fast as I can do it. Session 1 was an overview, and session 2, we had a special focus on science and its capabilities and limitations. And now we're going to begin 4 weeks of investigating some evidences to support the creation model of origins. Before we get into the outline, let me just share with you a few key points that I'd like you to think about and keep in mind as we go through today. There are scientific evidences to support the creation model. You'll hear people say, oh, creation, that's just religion. There are scientific evidences to support the creation model. Secondly, God created the universe fully formed and functional. There has been change since the creation, but change is not evolution. God created the universe fully formed and fully functional. In other words, it was ready to run. Third, God created the universe in a very short time frame. Fourth, the age of the universe is consistent with the biblical age as recorded in the Bible. And the last important point to keep in mind as we go through today, apologetics provides positive evidences for creation and can be used to refute evolution. Creation apologetics. Since we're talking about the heavens and the earth, did you hear one of the latest news reports from one of the Mars probes and landers? It seems that on Mars, they found this huge area, this large ring structure of precious stones, and a dusting of glitter all over the place. The only thing we can conclude from that is apparently efforts are underway to terraform the planet. Terraform the planet? Okay, that didn't work. Dot, dot, dash, dot, dash, dash, dot, 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 dash. What am I doing? Well, I'm apologizing with dots and dashes. Dot, dot, dot. Oh, what's that called? If you apologize with dots and dashes, it's called remorse code. Let's officially begin. I'd like to begin with the stanzas of the hymn as I've done in the past, and hopefully I'll be able to continue to do so. If you're wondering, we have many great hymns that talk about the concept of creation. The one I'd like to begin with today, I'll have to go here and come back, is hymn 347, Angels from the Realms of Glory, a hymn by James Montgomery. And thankfully, yes, it is still in CW 21. You're saying, wait a minute, that's a Christmas hymn. Well, you know what? It's okay. Listen to the stanzas of this hymn. Angels from the realms of glory, wing your flight over all the earth. You who sang creation's story, now proclaim Messiah's birth. Come and worship, come and worship. Worship Christ, the newborn King. Saints before the altar bending, watching long in hope and fear. Suddenly the Lord descending, in his temple shall appear. Come and worship, come and worship. Worship Christ, the newborn King. All creation join in praising God the Father, Spirit, Son. Evermore your voices raising to the eternal three in one. Come and worship, come and worship. Worship Christ, the newborn King. On your handout, I have this great quote from Martin Luther, but to set it up, Let's take a look at some selected verses from the opening chapter of the book of Genesis. Genesis 1, verse 1, then 6 through 8, and 14 through 19. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And God said, let there be an expanse in the midst of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters. And God made the expanse and separated the waters that were under the expanse from the waters that were above the expanse. And it was so. God called the expanse heaven. There was evening and there was morning, the second day. 14 through 19. And God said, let there be lights in the expanse of the heavens to separate the day from the night. And let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. And let them be lights in the expanse of the heavens to give light upon the earth. And it was so. And God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, the lesser light to rule the night, and the stars. And God set them in the expanse of the heavens to give light on the earth, to rule over the day and over the night, and to separate the light from the darkness. God saw that it was good. There was evening and there was morning, the fourth day. In Luther's commentary, this is what Martin Luther says. Got to turn my own page to read that, don't I? This thick and rude mass of mist or nebulosity, created out of nothing on the first day, God grasps by his word and commands it to extend itself into the form and with the motion of a sphere. And the heaven was formed by an extension of that original rude body of mist. If a friend or honest skeptic walks up to you and says, hey, wait a minute, you believe that in Genesis? Hasn't science proven that the universe is vast and old? Hasn't science proven that the universe evolved? How would you answer? Well, let's find out. Continuing as we're going to do most of the time, let's make sure that we understand that creation is not some kind of out-of-the-way doctrine in the Bible. It's a very foundational doctrine to the Bible. Let's take a look at some verses that support the idea that God created the heavens and the earth. Oops, sorry. I'm going to have to switch back. One of these days, I'll get this right. Oh boy. All right, one more time. We can do it. I know you can do it. Question. How often is creation mentioned in the Bible? Session 1, we saw a number of verses. Session 2, we saw a number of verses. This session will also see a number of verses. I know each time I have 6 specifically, but you'll notice there are others scattered throughout that talk about it. That same thing will happen today. Genesis 2:4. These are the generations of the heavens and the earth when they were created, in the day that the Lord God made the earth and the heavens. Isaiah, verse 45:12. I made the earth and created man on it. It was my hands that stretched out the heavens, and I commanded all their host. Zechariah 12, verse 1. The oracle of the word of the Lord concerning Israel. Thus declares the Lord, who stretched out the heavens and founded the earth and formed the spirit of man within him. Let's jump to the New Testament. Matthew 25, verse 34. Jesus speaking. Then the king will say to those on his right, come, you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. Hebrews 4:4. For he has somewhere spoken of the seventh day in this way, and God rested on the seventh day from all his works. Revelation 14:7. And he said with a loud voice, fear God and give him glory, because the hour of his judgment has come, and worship him who made heaven and earth, the sea, and the springs of water. Is the doctrine of creation mentioned often in the Bible? The answer is absolutely it is. Let's review some things about apologetics. The verse that we're going to be focusing on, where we get the apologetics mandate, and you'll notice that this isn't a suggestion, it's a command. Peter, but in your hearts honor Christ the Lord as holy, always being prepared to make a defense to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you, yet do it with gentleness and respect. What's apologetics? First session, we focused on this idea of clarification. Ask questions, listen carefully, ask questions so you understand what the honest skeptic is asking. Last time we noticed that our defense is first of all built upon positive evidences. Explain why creation is a better scientific explanation for origins than evolution. The third step is refutation. Refute the bad idea, not people, the bad model of evolution. We show the flaws and fallacies of the evolution model. Is that okay to do? Listen to Paul in Ephesians 5, verse 11. Take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them. You know what? It's okay. We're going to expose those unfruitful works of darkness. Speaking of apologetics, why are giraffes so slow to apologize? Well, it takes them a long time to swallow their pride. So let's focus on some positive creation evidences for the origin, for the creation of the universe. We're going to talk about 3 today. And although at first glance they sound a little scientific, I'm going to use some props and some ideas here so you can easily not only understand them, but explain them to somebody else. There are more than just these 3. But these are 3 good ones, and you don't have to remember all 3. Just remember one of them. Let's take a look. Let's review what is the creation model. Creation is a scientific idea that states that God is a supreme intelligence, created the universe fully formed and fully functional. In other words, it was ready to run in a very short time frame. Basic kinds of life were created, which later diversified. Natural laws were established to govern the operation of the universe. Natural laws. Let's say some more about that as we go along today. The writer of Hebrews puts it this way in Hebrews chapter 1, verse 3. He, talking about Jesus Christ, upholds the universe by the word of his power. Scientists, we just call that natural laws. It's important to notice that there are 2 different types of causes in science. There are 2 known legitimate causes in science. There is what a scientist calls a primary or intelligent cause. On the other hand, there's what a scientist calls a secondary or sometimes natural cause. We're familiar with both of these. If I showed you an object like this phone, even though you didn't see it being made, you'd say, oh yeah, that had a primary cause. That's good science. And we'll find out why that is. On the other hand, if you were walking across the countryside and saw a small canyon, you'd say, oh, looks like this was formed naturally. That's an important thing for us to distinguish in origins. See, evolution proposes only natural causes, whereas creation, we propose intelligent causes. So the heart of the scientific debate between creation and evolution centers on cause. Which is a more reasonable, legitimate cause? Primary, intelligence, God, or secondary, natural causes? Here's something else to keep in mind. Evolution doesn't just mean change. Today, people use the word evolution as a synonym for change. Change is part of the creation model also. The universe isn't exactly the same as when God created it. We know that. We've seen, for example, novas, stars erupting and perishing, and then supernovas. Somebody asked me, what's between a nova and a supernova? A pretty good nova. But we've seen change in the universe, and that's not evolution. So don't let anybody fool you. Evolution proposes enormous change. Change, small scale, that's okay for us in the creation model. Reminds me of this story I heard where a man was driving his car on, and he was pulling onto an on-ramp on I-43, and he happened to have the radio on, and suddenly there was a alert broadcast on the radio. It says, traffic alert for drivers on I-43 near Mequon. Be advised, there is a wrong-way driver. The guy is driver says, what do you mean, a wrong? There's hundreds of wrong-way drivers. Oh, I guess you're going to have to think about that just a little bit. So what are some scientific evidences to indicate that God, a primary cause, created the universe? Let's take a look. On your handout, I've listed 3, and there's just a little bit of comment about each one there. Let me read that to you, and then let's explain this a little bit too. I do have some props today. Oh boy. Number 1, fine tuning. Let's take a look at 2 biblical references, first of all, to set the stage. Isaiah chapter 40, verse 12. Who has measured the waters in the hollow of his hand and marked off the heavens with a span, enclosed the dust of the earth in a measure, and weighed the mountains in scales and the hills in a balance? A rhetorical question, because the answer is God. That sounds like what I'm going to call fine tuning. Job chapter 28, verses 24 and 25. For he looks to the ends of the earth and sees everything under the heavens. When he gave to the wind its weight and apportioned the waters by measure. Now, what do I mean by fine tuning? Well, for those of you old enough to remember, do you know what this is? This is a transistor radio. It's sort of like an iPod, but okay. Well, in the bad old days, you turn them on. No, you turn them on. And lots of times it was just static in the days before digital tuning. But if you turn this carefully.
Important to discover this document because you realize this wasn't just it was a plan.
You can
and
hear.
The more we keep learning, even after the book was published, we keep reporting here at CBS News.
Now, if I turn around, this is the way it is. There are many more channels of static out there than there are channels that convey information. Do a thought experiment with me. If you just randomly set this dial and then turned it on, what are the odds that it would be on a station? Not very high. Now, young folks, younger than me, this is not digital tuning. This is analog tuning, right? Yeah. So the odds of you on a station, not high. If it's on a station, somebody, you, the intelligent person, tuned it there. As another example, consider walking into a department store, maybe Walmart or Meijer or even Best Buy. Do they still have those stores? And you go to the section with the televisions and you look and you see all the televisions are on the same channel. They're all tuned to the NCAA Final Four tournament. You think, that is weird. How just by random accident, they're all on the same channel? That's not what you think at all. You think an intelligent person acting with plan and purpose set it that way. And you'd be right. So what is the fine-tuning argument? The fine-tuning argument, also sometimes called the teleological argument, says that the conditions, the parameters on the universe are just right for not only the existence of the universe, but for the existence of life, for the existence of intelligent life, and for the investigation of the universe. I call these things surprise effects. We'll list a number of them in just a minute. But a scientist would say, you know, the mass of the proton and the mass of the electron are just right. If one were a little bigger, a little smaller, we wouldn't have a universe. These surprise effects indicate design, plan, and purpose. This shows that the universe was finely tuned for life by an omnipotent creator, God. That's the positive state. It also shows the impossibility of the universe arising by chance. That's the refutation, refuting evolution. Okay, so what are some of these distances? I have them just listed briefly. Oh, you might have to turn over the sheet now to see the evidences there. For example, the distance between the Earth and the Sun. The Earth is 150,000 kilometers, 150 million kilometers. It's 93 million miles. Yeah, 150 million kilometers away. As it turns out, we're at just the right distance. Did you know astronomers call this the Goldilocks zone? We're not too hot, we're not too cold, we're just right. The next planet closer to the sun, Venus, is so hot that lead exists in a molten state on the surface. That's hot. The next planet further out from the sun, Mars, has an average temperature of minus 200 degrees. That's cold. It's sort of like Wisconsin in wintertime. No. Our planet is in just the right habitable. It's in the Goldilocks zone. Not too hot, not too cold, just right. Here's another surprising effect. Now, you're saying that's not surprising if God created everything. You're right. It'd be very surprising if things happen by chance. The sun spectra, the light from the sun. Did you know that the sun's spectra is finely tuned for plants? Plants, as you know, produce food and oxygen for us by photosynthesis. If you're a gardener, an indoor gardener, you know you just can't hang any old light bulb over your plant. They won't grow. You need a special spectra of light. That's right. If we had a different star out there besides the sun, photosynthesis wouldn't work. The chlorophyll in plants is finely tuned to a specific wavelength from about 500 to 700 nanometers. That's important for us too. Here's a third example of fine tuning. Our moon. Did you know that having one moon is vital for life on planet Earth? If we had no moon, no life. Multiple moons, no life. Got to have one moon. Why? Here's one reason. The moon regulates tides. Twice a day, fisher folk, you know this, high tide, low tide. Now, that's very important because it cleanses the tidal basin. It ensures that we have oxygen producing algae. Yeah, very important for life on planet Earth. You must have a moon to regulate tides and cleanse the tidal basins. Handing this around for you to get your hands on. You know what this is? This is a moon rock. Look, it's this little tiny thing way down there. Now, I didn't go to the moon, although I was privileged to speak to astronaut Jim Irwin, who was on Apollo 17, who was on the moon. He didn't give me this. This is actually a meteorite that was blasted off of the moon, captured by Earth's orbit, and then landed here. Just a little tiny fragment, so they can sell these for $29.95. But now you've held a piece of the moon. Asked my science class as a pre-quiz. All right, class, which is further away, Florida or the moon? One student rolled his eyes and said, duh. Can you see Florida from here? Next evidence, the Earth's atmosphere. Our atmosphere is just right, not too thin, not too thick, and its constituents allow us to see through it. It's transparent. The atmosphere not only blocks out many harmful forms of radiation, it lets through many good forms of radiation, including light and heat. It lets the good radiation through, and it shields us from much of the harmful radiation. Venus has too much atmosphere. It's the greenhouse effect run amok. Mars, hardly any atmosphere at all. Ours is just right. Water. Now, don't let me go on and on about this, because you know that I have a degree in physical chemistry. Water is an amazing substance. Water is the only compound that we know that at normal temperatures and pressures here on planet Earth exists in 3 different states and something special. When water freezes, scientists would say when it goes through a phase change from the liquid to the solid state, when water freezes, its density decreases, it expands. Ice floats. Only substance we know that does that. Is that important? Absolutely. Otherwise, after a while, lakes and rivers would freeze solid because the ice would sink. Wouldn't be enough radiant energy in the summertime to warm it up and melt the ice. We wouldn't have life on planet Earth if water didn't have that very special property. Here's another interesting chemical element, oxygen. Oxygen is almost a perfect fuel. Many things burn oxygen, including space shuttles and cars, etc. Oxygen is almost a perfect fuel if you're designed to use it. If you're not designed to use it, it's a horrible corrosive material. You know, cars rust out. It's not the salt. The salt is just an accelerant. It's the oxygen that causes rust. Same with our bodies. Our bodies don't rust, but you know to take your antioxidants like vitamin C in order to protect so your cells can regenerate the harmful effects of oxygen. Great fuel if you're designed to use it. So many of these, just the last one I'll mention is, do you know that if you look up at the sky, don't look directly at the sun, but the size of the sun in the sky is exactly the same as the size of the moon. Their apparent size or angular size is the same. So my friend and colleague, Dr. Danny Faulkner, has taken a look at every planet in the solar system with all the moons to take a look and see which planets could have a total eclipse of the sun. In other words, the moon would fully block it out. Guess how many planets in the solar system can experience a total solar eclipse? That's right, just planet Earth. Why? God said in Genesis 1, these act as signs. Aha. Let me read. This is from a hostile witness. This is Dr. Stephen Hawking, until his death 4 or 5 years ago. Outspoken, anti-Christian, evolutionary scientist. But he admits the remarkable fact is that the values of these numbers, and he's talking about the constants of physics like the gravitational force, seem to have been very finely tuned to make possible the development of life. Wow. Again, this is not proof. What we're talking about fine-tuned, this is not proof. Science can't do that. But I think you'd agree this is very strong evidence for the creation of life by an omnipotent creator. Aha. Let's move on to evidence 2 of fine-tuning. Evidence 2 that I want to share with you is the law of conservation of mass energy. Oh no, this is too much. Now it's simple, simple. 2 verses to set the stage. Genesis 2, 1 through 3. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. And on the 7th day, God finished his work that he had done, and he rested on the 7th day from all his work that he had done. God blessed the 7th day, made it holy, because on it God rested from all his work that he'd done in creation. Hebrews 4:4, we heard earlier, repeating Genesis 2. So, what is the law of conservation of mass and energy? This is a physical law of science. By the way, mass and energy are just 2 sides of the same thing. You can convert stuff into energy. For example, you could burn wood. Where'd the wood go? It was changed into energy. You have a cyclotron, a nuclear reactor. You can change energy into matter. It's just, don't worry about it. I'll give you an example here in just a second. Do you know what this is? This is a magic bottle. There's something in this bottle now, but it wasn't always that way. It used to be an empty bottle. Somebody gave me this bottle and said, it's a magic bottle. They said, put this cork in it, don't open it, just leave it like this, and set this on your windowsill every day. Check it. I did, every day. One day, 7 months after owning this magic bottle, that appeared, that ship. You don't believe me, do you? Good. You're a good scientist. The reason you don't believe me is because that would violate the law of conservation of mass and energy. This natural law states that the total amount of stuff, matter, mass, energy in the universe is constant. In other words, matter energy can neither be created nor destroyed in the current universe. So, think of that bottle as the universe. That's all there is. That's all there is physically, the universe. Now, if there's stuff in that bottle, how'd it get in there? Did the universe birth itself? No. Or did somebody outside the universe, did a grand omnipotent designer pull the cork out? I can't even do that. Put the stuff in supernaturally. The answer is yes, that's what happened. How do we know that? The law of conservation. So how do we put this together? This shows the universe must have been created by supernaturally by something outside of the universe, namely God. That's the positive evidence. It also shows the universe could not have begun itself naturally. That refutes evolution. The third example, the third natural law I want to share with you is one of the laws of thermodynamics. There are, depending upon who you read, 3, 3.5, 4 laws of thermodynamics. A very famous one, and you may have heard of this one too, is the second law of thermodynamics. Let me read 2 verses so we can set the stage here. Psalm 102, verses 25 through 27. Of old you laid the foundation of the earth, and the heavens are the work of your hands. They will perish, but you will remain. They will all wear out like a garment. You will change them like a robe, and they will pass away. But you are the same, and your years have no end. Romans 8, Paul reiterating the same thing. For the creation waits with eager longing for the revealing of the sons of God. For the creation was subjected to futility, not willingly, but because of him who subjected it, in hope that the creation itself will be set free from its bondage to corruption and obtain the freedom of the glory of the children of God. For we know that the whole creation has been groaning together in the pains of childbirth until now. Here's my straightforward example for the second law of thermodynamics. You know what this is? I like this guy. This is my Lilliput robot. It's a little wind-up robot. Got to keep it in the frame here. See a little key there, etc. Now, you know how these work, right? You'll set them there, and energy will fall on it, and all by itself, that key will wind up, and then it'll start walking merrily along and keep walking and walking. No. What has to happen is you have to wind it up. So now I've wound up my Lilliput. Hello. Oh yeah, gotta take the key out, otherwise his arm gets stuck in it. I've wound up my Lilliput robot. There he goes. Now, we know that he's just going to keep walking and walking and walking and walking and walking and oh, he's slowing down. He's slowing. Darn. Folks, that's the second law of thermodynamics. What's the second law say? The second law says naturally entropy increases. Oh, scientific term. Don't be scared. That's not a problem. The second law states that entropy is a scientific / mathematical model of disorder, increases naturally. In other words, left to itself, everything moves from a state of order to disorder. Another way of thinking it is a capacity to do useful work. The capacity to do useful work naturally decreases over time. So, this shows that the universe must have been supernaturally wound up in the beginning. Positive. It also shows the universe could not have begun naturally, since things are naturally winding down. If this is the universe, somebody from the outside had to wind it up. But now we see, because of Adam's sin, we see everything corrupted, and even the physical universe running down and wearing out. Now, if we see a running universe, that means that someone must have wound it up. If we see a universe winding down, then that means naturally it could not have wound itself up. There's always a big question that comes with this, and that is, but what about the age? Scientists have proven the age of the universe. It's billions of years old, right? Great quote from Martin Luther. You're thinking, well, how would Martin Luther have known about this stuff? Martin Luther was kind of a smart guy, wasn't he? If you think evolution is a new idea, or evolution was developed by Charles Darwin in the 19th century, nope. Evolution has a very long history, thousands of years old. And maybe we can talk about that sometime. Let's take a look at this quote by Martin Luther. From Moses, what's he mean? He's talking about, of course, the books of Moses. He's talking about Genesis. From Moses, Genesis, however, we know that 6,000 years ago, the world did not exist. But of this, no philosopher, specifically Luther was thinking about Aristotle, who subscribed to evolution. No philosopher, let's just say evolutionist, can in any way be persuaded. See, there's a big difference between evolution and creation, isn't there? Evolution says the universe is billions of years old, but creation says the universe is only thousands of years old. Really? How's that work? The vast age for the universe is an assumption made by evolution. Today, it's 13.81 billion years. That hasn't always been the case. In the 20th century, the estimates at the end of the 20th century was the universe was 15 to 18 billion years old. I've seen estimates as low as 2 billion to up to 20 billion years over the last 100 years. How do they come up with that? Well, first of all, they assume what they're trying to prove. They assume the Big Bang is true. And because of that, the universe is expanding. This rate of expansion, then they run backwards in time and say, oh, since it's expanding today from the singularity in the past, it took 13.8 billion years. Well, there's a lot to investigate there. That's very simplistic. But let me give you some counter examples. Now, as a scientist, I always say the universe is less than 10,000 years. And people say, why don't you say the universe is 6,000 years old? Because scientists, we do things in powers of 10. Yes, Martin Luther believed that the heavens and earth were created in not quite 4,000 BC. Most scholars think that too. So that makes the heavens and earth about 6,000 years old. But can we say 10,000 just as a round figure? What are some other evidences? There are many evidences to show the biblical time frame. In other words, the heavens and the earth are only less than 10,000 years old. First of all, think about the length of recorded history. We only have recorded history back 3,000 years BC. Yeah. I was privileged. My wife and I went to the Oriental Museum at the University of Chicago. I was holding some clay tablets that were about 2,400 years old. That's really cool. Amazing stuff. We have recorded history. People knew how to do this, but not for hundreds of thousands or millions of years. How about a few natural examples? The Earth, as you know, has a magnetic field. That's how compasses work. Did you know that the magnetic field of planet Earth is decaying? Like everything else, it's naturally winding down. So, well, if you extrapolate backwards, if you go back 10,000 years, the magnetic field is strong, much stronger than it is now, but not harmful to life. If you go back 100,000 years or 1,000,000 years, that magnetic field is too strong. It would tear apart living cells. The Earth is young. In the solar system, we have something called short period comets. These are comets that take an elliptical path around the sun and return, hundreds of years. Halley's, some people say Halley's Comet, was an example of a short period comet. The problem with short period comets is every time they go around the sun, they burn off their material. And after so many trips around the sun, they burn themselves up. Most scientists say that short period comets could not exist for longer than 10,000 years. Short period comets, no problem in a universe that's less than 10,000 years old. Big problem if the universe is billions of years old. Did you know that 4 planets in our solar system have rings? Saturn, the most beautiful and obvious one, Jupiter, Uranus, and Neptune, the 4 outer gaseous planets, all have rings. They're pretty, they're beautiful, but here's the problem. Those rings are very unstable. Those rings could not last for millions or billions of years since the formation of the solar system. Those rings are unstable. They can last thousands of years, but not millions or billions of years. Again, no problem in a young solar system, huge problem for the evolution model. We'll talk about radiometric dating, but we're going to do that a little later. For now, carbon-14, that's one type of radiometric dating. Most scientists said, carbon-14, that can only be used for recent things that are only thousands of years old. But some scientists with the organization I'm associated with, the Creation Research Society, about 20 years ago said, if the Earth is young, there should be carbon-14 in everything. And as it turns out, there is. Do you know there's carbon-14 in diamonds? See, diamonds cannot be millions of years old. Otherwise, the carbon-14 would have decayed. Diamonds could be thousands of years old. I want to ask a favor of you. When you're thinking about age and talking about age, I know it's very common. A lot of people say, well, God created with an appearance of age. I personally don't like that. Appearance sounds deceptive, and that's not what God did at all. What God did is he created things fully formed and functional. You can use the word mature. I'll ask this again later, three weeks from now, when we talk about the origin of human beings. How old was Adam on day 7? The answer is 1 day. How old did he look? God created things that worked immediately. If that looks old to you, well, you're just coming at it with a bias. So God created things fully formed and functional, mature. The creation was ready to run at the beginning. All right, here's a question. What's the only truly accurate way to determine an age? What's the only legal way to determine an age? The answer is via a reliable witness, right? You take all this documentation to the Department of Motor Vehicles and they give you a driver's license, and then you can prove how old you are. The only certain way to determine an age is a reliable witness. The evolution model has no reliable witness. The creation model does. God's word declares the universe to be less than 10,000 years old. So back to our question up front. Doesn't the size and age of the universe prove evolution? No. We've seen today that there are 3 better evidences: fine-tuning, the law of conservation, and the second law of thermodynamics, that show the idea of creation is much more reasonable than the idea of evolution. There are better evidences that God created the universe within the biblical time frame. So don't forget, creation is a reasonable, sensible, and scientific explanation for origins. Philippians 4:5 in the ESV. Let your reasonableness be known to everyone. Natural origins by evolution? That's foolish. Foolish. Creation by God? Reasonable. Is creation an important doctrine? Oh, absolutely. We'll see this later on also. But remember what I pointed out last time. Creation can serve as a great common ground as we discuss with other people, as we interact with the honest skeptic who really wants an answer. Some skeptics are dishonest. And Jesus said in Matthew 7, don't give dogs what is holy. Don't throw pearls before pigs, lest they trample them underfoot and turn to attack you. I'm not going to respond to a dishonest skeptic, but to an honest skeptic, you bet. Absolutely. The purpose of creation apologetics is to point to Christ. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him. Without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. I think the mission statement of St. Matthew connects this all together, right? I mean, aren't we shining the light of God's word to make and strengthen disciples of Jesus Christ? Apologetics is the pre-tool. Get rid of those questions and now go to the word. Thanks so much for your rapt attention today. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace.